Welcome to today's session. We're going to have an industry discussion specifically focused on a company that's recently gone through a SAPRA audit. And for those purposes, I'm going to introduce Seven Blade Medical. And today we've got Bernhard from Seven Blade Medical that's going to talk to us a bit about their facility, what they've been up to. So Bernhard, if you could please give us a short introduction on Seven Blade Medical.
Hey Jeff, how's it going? Just first of all, the SAPRA inspection went really well. It was about 2 or 3 weeks ago that they came to visit us. It was all quite a anxious experience, not knowing what to expect and whatnot. So we'll just be chatting about the whole experience and sort of the stages it took to get there and the preparation that led to it.
Awesome, perfect. And we've also got Ross McPhail on the line as well, someone who I know has helped you in the process. So Ross, good to have you back on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Nice to see you.
Good, guys. So I'm going to kick us off. Bernhard has been kind enough to send us some images of the facility, and I always like to have a conversation that focuses on that. So Bernhard, I'm going to let you do a lot of the talking, and we're going to have some questions for you today. But before we get into the facility, what you've been up to, I always like to find out what got you interested in the space, why did you decide to pursue this, and how long ago was that?
Well, you see, Jeff, I've been quite interested in horticulture my whole life, and I'd say when I was about 13 years old, I discovered a young cannabis plant growing in my back garden. I took quite a lot of care for it, and I really made a connection with cannabis at that point already, keeping it a big secret from my parents and whatnot. So I guess the relationship started there, but as I grew older, it became a bit more serious as a hobby, and I tested all the different variables of growing cannabis, and I was faced with all the challenges, and I experienced pretty much everything that can go wrong with cannabis, and I took a deep dive into the hobbyist section of growing cannabis, and it taught me a lot. And the main kickoff into the industry was when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. So that was about 3 years ago, and for the last 2 years, I've just been dedicating my life to building this facility and doing the research and understanding what it requires and the process that I need to take to get there. So awesome. That's it.
Awesome. Well, it's a great looking facility, and we're going to go through that today. I mean, I think a big question I had is, so it's been 3 years now in the making that you've taken it from the hobbyist to the commercialization aspect. What were some of the biggest challenges you experienced in the early days, just on the back of the Concord ruling?
So some of the major challenges that I faced was, finding the correct property. That was quite a challenge, as there's like a lot of farms available in South Africa, but like which farm is actually suited for growing cannabis? You start to consider the location, the surrounding farms, the neighboring towns, and then you have to consider like the municipality in that town and the local police and how you can interact with them. So my first attempt was in the Western Cape, but it was in Karatra, and that fell under the Knysna district of the municipality. So my journey started there, and getting my letters of consent signed by the Knysna municipality and the Knysna SAPs. I found that quite difficult, as they were very inexperienced in what to do with signing consent letters for the cannabis industry. So I mean, that was one of the challenges, and the next challenge I was faced with that location was the zoning. Zone 1 agricultural doesn't mean the same in each town. So Zone 1 agricultural in Knysna district didn't allow for dispatching, so couldn't send off packaged product from there. And if I wanted to change that zoning rights, I would have had to go through like a year's worth of documents and getting the local neighbors to agree the whole process. It would have been a long journey, nonetheless. So that was quite challenging. But once I found the right area and location to look for land, it became clear to me that George was the correct area for that. And their Zone 1 agriculture was already stipulated that you can, without upgrading the agricultural zoning, you can weigh and package, you can distribute, and you can set up a big sizable store to do that all without getting consent from surrounding neighbors and the local newspaper and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So yeah, once that was out of the way, it led me to the local municipality and getting the right person to speak to about getting the consent letters signed and also letterheads drawn up. So yeah, I guess those were one or two of the challenges that I faced. Another challenge was the local SOPD. They were not keen at all to sign my documents because there was a guy who tried to set up a dispensary here in George called Cannabis, I think. And they had a whole bust on that thing, and they were very suspicious when I approached them with my letter of consent. And they're like, "You're going to do the same as Cannabis?" No, that's not the case here. I'm applying for medical export. And so what happened was that I eventually had like 10 meetings with the local colonel, and he didn't budge at all. So I spoke to SAPRA, and they advised me that I could, obtain the license first and then go there to the SAPD with my license and then get the consent signed. So yeah, that was about 2 or 3 months of me having back and forth meetings with the police, and it was just crazy. It was a ball ache.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you've acclimated them to it. I know that other industries in the Western Cape as well. I mean, Wesco has been quite proactive about promoting cannabis in the Western Cape. So that's kind of good to see. I think there's more information. I think future individuals and companies looking at cultivation licenses will definitely have an easier time than you would have had in the process. And thanks for in that in the process. So I think let's jump into what everyone wants to see. And I think let's go into the facility. And I think, Ross, if you've got some questions as we move along, feel free to ask them as well. But I'm going to jump us straight into the discussion right now on the actual facility. So here we go. Securitization. Talk us a little through the requirements on securitization. It looks like you've got obviously a double enclosure there with the entrance. How long did it take? How did it go? We won't spend too much time, but was that your first major challenge?
So yeah, the security was one of the aspects that had a lot of requirements to tick all the boxes, and double gate, which is an airlock gate, was one of them. Gives us the comfortability of locking whichever visitor, whether it be by appointment or not, into the enclosed area and gather all the information. And whether or not I decide to let them in or out, I've got all that information of them, and that suspicion is cancelled out of them being a threat, of course. And that system is completely monitored by CCTV cameras, so everything is recorded, and also the access control logbook is digital. So everything gets uploaded to a cloud server, and the car and the license registration, everything is recorded in that process.
Okay.
So in terms of security, I think I've nailed it. The fence is 2.4 meters high, and it's fully electrified. You can't even touch the posts. They'll shock you 240 volts into heaven. And the reason I can do that is because I've got an outer perimeter fence, which is about 3 meters offset from that fence. And if anyone had to be on my property, they are trespassing, and that's the reason I can put the fence on high voltage like that.
Okay, good. I was going to ask that. Yeah. So you clarified that quite nicely about the safety in case a child comes along, touches the fence. So you've double walled that. Go ahead. You had something more to say on the security.
Yeah, just on top of that, so you can see there's a 7-meter light pole there, street light pole, and those got 200-watt LEDs on there that really give a good spread of light during the evening. And they also rigged to the alarm system, so if the fence or the building alarm is tampered with, the lights hit on spotlights, and it's like a prison, you know, like you can't escape, and everything is recorded.
Well, at least that way you're going to have worker security. You know, you can't leave sites or enter site without stringent control. And I saw there was on your gate there a CA number. Do you want to talk us through that briefly?
So one of the requirements is that your company is clearly displayed upon entrance, whether it be on your building or at your entrance gate, I suppose. And also just stipulates who the authorized representative is, which is myself, and the deputy authorized representative, which is Michael Hart in this case. Then I've left the opening there for a CA number to be included. So that, like, sort of when SAPRA arrived, you know, they read the sign and they could see, look, I'm eager for that number. And you know, once they give us that resolution letter and the license, and we'll fill it in there. And
okay, perfect.
We'll finally get, you know, settle that.
And if you had to estimate, because I think the question is, how long do you anticipate waiting now for that resolution letter?
Well, we've been told they're not allowed to take longer than 1 month. So the audit happened on the 11th of March. So the 11th of April would be the due date.
Okay, awesome. Good. So we've knocked that one out of the park. Let's jump into what I like is HVAC and your ESCOM generator here. So first thing, for the audience at large, HVAC is obviously for the air handling unit. I'm gonna forget now. This is crazy, but obviously HVAC. Ross, give me the definition again.
Humidity, ventilation, and air conditioning or air control.
Exactly, and it's been years before I always call it an HVAC that I don't even consider it. I know it's air conditioning at the end, so that's my blunder. In terms of the electrical power generation support, how much kVA are we generating on the system?
So I've had to upgrade the transformer. Originally, there was a 25 kVA transformer on the farm. I had to upgrade it to a 250 kVA. Now, that doesn't mean that my facility is drawing 250 kVA, but I put a big enough transformer in there so when I build a greenhouse in the future, that it can power that as well. So currently, that transformer is probably only running at half capacity. In saying that, it does push 300 amps through the building, and that generator is more than capable of handling it. It's a 125 kVA, which is minimal requirement, but it's a very high spec generator, and it's able to draw 300 amps through it into the main DB, so without short circuiting the system, which is quite something important to consider when buying a generator, not just considering its kVA, but its internal specification on how it carries that power through. Obviously, those two units there behind the generator, or the HVAC units or air handling units, they both run independently, and the first one runs the processing area, and the larger one on the right-hand side of the bottom left-hand image, that runs my flowering room. So what I've done there is I've created an intake ducting with a HEPA filter, and the HVAC unit itself, it's recirculating 100%, but it's also pulling in about 20% fresh air at the same time through that HEPA filter. So we're constantly adding a percentage ratio of fresh air into that exchanges, and on top of that, the exchanges are 3 exchanges. One exchange every 3 minutes, which is 20 exchanges in 1 hour, I believe, which complies with, you know, ISO 8001 standard regarding, you know, clean room ventilation.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that I did was I really focused on that sort of spec on my processing and growing space, so that when SAPRA did come, I could explain it all to them and why I did it that way. Even though I was applying for a GACP license, I considered this facility a GMP facility. So I built everything that I could to my consideration in GMP spec, being the processing and the growing areas as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, this has been a hot topic. I know that there's been communication from SAPRA around the ability to apply for a GMP certificate for cultivation. There's still much to be said about that ultimately, because it is very difficult when you're trying to be internationally competitive. If you're going for a GACP spec or you're going for a GMP spec, they're two different worlds. And I'm glad to see that you've brought elements of GMP across as much as possible. And there's also, I mean, GMP is not just pharmaceutical, truly. There's GMP for food and dietary supplement grades. So, it's a bit of a broad definition at times. South Africa tends to be a little more pharmaceutical on that. But it's really good to see that. I'm not going to get into too much technicals like the validation of the HVAC and, that I assume has kind of gone through in the audits. I like the presentation, and I'm going to jump over quickly to, the water supply. Obviously, you've got great water that's coming out of the boreholes. I believe the water quality testing has met specifications that you don't have to do too much in terms of any additional processing on the water.
That's correct. The water that we have on the farm was one of the reasons we bought the farm. The test came back very positive, and it complies with full drinking standards. It's even better than the municipal water here. So in that case, the filtration that we set up is minimal, and it's more than compliant for SAPRA regulation.
100%, and I mean that's the big thing, is proving compliance. I know that you said you have additional grow space that in the future, depending how things commercialize, how things go, you've obviously secured off quite a large portion on the site. So we're going to look more into the facility momentarily. But how big is the land that you could potentially expand into?
So my property is about 5 hectares big, but I've only enclosed about 1.2 hectares. So in the space that we're looking at now is where I intend to set up my future greenhouse. Now, the reason it hasn't been set up from the start is because of my previous discussion. Is I try to do everything as much as possible to the GMP spec as I can, including the growing space. So when I set up that greenhouse, it's going to be a GMP spec greenhouse, the space required for that wouldn't be as much as hectares and hectares and hectares. I could set up a greenhouse about the same size as the facility and accommodate about 5,000 plants, and that would be beautiful. So
awesome.
Yeah,
perfect. So Bernhard, tell us a bit more about the facility entrance, the access control. I see you've got a keypad up there as well.
Yeah, so on the left-hand side is the exterior shot of the entrance. Just on the left of the door is the access control panel. It's hidden inside that weather box. So that panel there has got a two-phase verification where you scan your card and you enter your personal ID in there to access the building. Now, something else I just want to mention is the pest control there that I've got the renticule on either side of that entrance there, just to eliminate the factor of any rodents getting in through that door when it is open, and it is never open due to its magnetic lock and door closer. So yeah, that's just that's topic there. And on the right hand side on that image, we can see as you come in through that door, you got the keypad, which is my alarm keypad for the building, and just below that we've got the emergency exit, the green one, in case the system is jammed up and no one can get out, and you can hit that button and all the mag locks will disengage for that reason. And then obviously the fire hydrant, the signage, and the hand sanitizer, it's all quite vital elements to have in place by your entrance and exits. So yeah, that's pretty much protocol coming into the facility.
Okay, awesome, perfect. So let me go into the actual layout and design here. Ross, I think I'll bring you in here as well. I know that Bernhard has got some experience in design work, interior design work. What were some of the considerations in terms of the workflow from raw retrieval or raw material receival all the way to dispatch?
Yeah, look, the flow in this building was amazing. There was one thing that absolutely floored me. I mean, even the attention to detail, the way Bernhard just paid so much attention. I mean, even if a sticker would skew, we would scrape it off and put a new sticker on. So, I mean, we ran around this facility at 2 o'clock in the morning sorting out stickers, even on the floors for that matter. And yeah, even attention to detail, like the COVID-19 signage. I mean, it was just great, the way that he worked the flow, the way it was designed, and the way it looks and feels.
Okay, awesome, perfect. Bernhard, I noticed there's even cameras in the passageway. Talk us through what we're seeing right now on the screen.
All right, so the image on the left-hand side is just after entering the facility. You are faced with the main corridor, which on the left-hand side you can access the processing areas, and on the right-hand side would be the first door, would be the veg room. Now, something you can't see in these images is the lavatories and the boardroom and canteen area, but that's irrelevant in this discussion right now. This corridor wraps around the whole processing area, so any door that's non-GMP, or what I consider non-GMP, can be accessed via these corridors. But if you are entering any processing area, you have to go through the airlock Ppe room, which is the first door on the left-hand side. The doors that also enter through the processing area complete two-phase verification. So you have to scan your face, and then you have to verify your access control card, and then it only allows you into that. It's also obviously programmed in such a way that only certain staff may enter certain areas at certain times of the day.
Okay.
And then the image on the right, it's just the first internal shot of the vegetative room, where we've got a stainless steel bench there, where we would prepare cuttings and such for propagation.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I see it's a kind of a hybridization between the GACP and GMP. So I kind of see what you've been trying to achieve in terms of, compartmentalization of the rooms and the rest of that. I'd like to go through the rest of the facility because there's quite a lot here we can talk about in terms of our propagation side. Take us through that.
Right, so I've got the cloning area in the vegetative area, and it also houses my mother genetics. But at this point, we will be importing tissue cultured plants, so there's not really necessary space for mothers. But besides all that, I've got a double shelf there at the moment for clones. Each dome can probably hold about 25 to 50 clones. And, as our facility expands, we'll have to expand that section to accommodate more storage for those cuttings. And I like to keep the first stage of production all in one space. So, you don't have to go from room to room with your cuttings and such. So you pretty much get to take your cutting from the mother, prepare it there, just fit it in the dome, and then after the cutting is fruited, you can place it onto the rolling benches, which we'll see in the next image.
Okay, awesome.
So that all happens in one space.
Before we go over to that point, I'd like to ask a question. Tell us a bit about challenges. You talked about tissue culture, clones coming in. Maybe discuss, if you can, a moment on, some of the challenges you experienced around importation and getting all of that done.
Yeah, so that topic brings me to my intake, my service level agreement for my intake, and that's from what needed to be in place for that to happen was they need to obviously have a cannabis breeding license, as well as export permit. And for me to bring that product in, I would need an import permit, and as well as my cannabis license allows me to export the product. So those are a few documents that need to be set in place for your product to start off. And that leads me to the traceability. I mean, if you can trace your seed all the way from when you germinated it, but where's the trace from before that? So those documents sort of put you in line with the complete traceability from seed to sale. And that's what SAPRA wants to see. They want to see where the seed comes from and who made the seed, and or whether, in my case, it's going to be tissue culture. So we're going to cut a bit of time out of the process, and we're going to get rooted tissue cultured clones, which come in from the States, and I'll vegetate them for a month and train them to the right strength and size for flowering, and pop them straight into the flowering room. From there, we'll be able to keep one or two and create mother genetics from that. So it will be a few months down the line, give us some time to prepare the room to accommodate the mothers, additional lighting and additional cloning racks and such.
Okay, awesome, great. It's good to hear that approach in terms of bringing in clones for tissue culture. So let's go into the veg area and tell us a bit about the vegging planning and also the nutrient scheme.
So the veg room is currently, I've got 2 rolling trays, rolling benches there. It's not that I'm squished for space in that room, but it's all my planning. It's always for the future. So the room can accommodate a whole bunch more of those tables, and as well as it's got the height and the volume to accommodate double tier. Also, I've gone with LED there so that I can do that. And also the LED lights fall under the GMP spec for growing. So that's also why I just spent the extra few thousand on LED grow lights, just to maximize my control over them. I'm able to dim them from 0 to 100%. I can set sunrise, sunset settings with them via the controller that I use, which is the Troll Master. And the lights themselves, they're Nanolux LED fittings, and they're also modular in the sense that you can buy more bars or take out bars to increase or decrease the wattage for your application. On top of that, I've also got floor drainage in the vegetative area, so all trays drain out to floor drain, which is collected in a soakaway far from the building, and that sort of drains away into the earth naturally. In saying that, all my nutrients is organic and completely safe for the environment. And my STS cards, my standard distribution safety cards, standard data cards, they stipulate all that information and the breakdown times and precautions and everything. So we are following all the rules in nature conservation and such. And it's just also the floors are all epoxy coated, and there's coatings on where the floors and the walls meet, and that epoxy coating is painted up onto it so that it creates a seal. So it's absolutely watertight, and that same coating runs up the corners of the walls and hits the roof and the walls. So there's where I paid for the GMP specification, as well as the doors being completely rubber sealed and polyurethane injected as well, aluminium frames, Sikaflex all the way around. So it's really easy to clean, and it functions amazingly.
Okay.
I noticed you got some tomato plants. The tomato plants.
The tomato plants there, I wouldn't say I'm the most proud of. They've suffered a bit of neglect since the inspection, but that's the plants that we were cultivating for inspection and to demonstrate to SAPRA how I take cuttings and how I move that cutting from the vegetative area to the propagation area, and then we'd move a month later into the vegetative stage, and we moved it into the flowering room, and I showed them how I pot the plant into the bed. And so the tomato plants were pretty much just there for a bit of validation and to impress SAPRA.
100%. Well, we can see you're more of a cannabis-focused guy than a tomato-focused guy. They've served their purposes for validation purposes, and I think just for the audience's benefit, obviously you've got to validate your cultivation scheme and your protocols and your SOPs, and tomatoes or chilies is a good model for that. So it's something that you just demonstrate the efficiency to the regulator in terms of what you're doing and how you're approaching it. So I'd like to jump into our next discussion here, and this is maybe talk us a bit about through your nutrient store, maybe how it's been, the management of the fertigation, etc.
All right, cool. So pretty much with the previous image we looked at from the borehole, the water comes from there, comes through the roof, then fills up these 2,000 liter tanks Now, they can store the water for however long, even though it won't be long at all. The reason I can say that is because I've got a recirculating system. So if I consider the water stale, I'll recirculate the water through the tanks, and that also will regulate the water temperature and the oxygenization of the water. The water moves through the pump and goes through the water meter, and I've got a fertilizer injector, which I'll mix up my organic nutrients in that smaller white container there next to the pump. It's got a little suction device that lies at the bottom of that tank, and it pulls in however many milliliters per liter I set the device up to. So in my case, it's pretty simple dosage. I do 5 ml per liter, and that device will draw it up, and it will work with the water meter to calculate that. And the solenoids and the valves are opened or closed, and it leads the fert or the water to the beds, the room next door.
Okay, good, excellent. I'm sure at some stage you'll probably also have some kind of mixing tank there to avoid any settlement or unnecessary distribution of nutrients in a tank that's being pulled into, or have a some agitation in that tank. But that's things that are going to come along. In terms of talk us a bit about the flowering room, some of the considerations there. I know that's in your slide deck. I saw a very nice quest system as well. So I suppose in your grow and flowering rooms, we can talk about that dehumidification system and some of the room controls here.
Sure. So I'll just chat about this image on the left here, the STS cards and IPM storage and stock take list. I keep my IPM in the fridge as it's also organically derived beneficial fungicides and such that need to stay at a cool temperature to last the shelf life. Then on the right-hand side there, I've got the image of the grow room, the main flowering room. I'm kitted out with 14 660 watt nanolux LEDs. They're controlled by a Troll Master as well, and they've got all the functionality I mentioned earlier: dimming, day, night, sunrise, sunset. On top of that, I've got huge air movers, which people usually use to extract stores with instead of oscillating fans. That peel the air down the length of the grow room. The grow room is also designed in like a linear design. It's only 4.5 meters wide by 12 meters long. The reason I did that is just to simulate the air coming from the one end and moving through the entire crop in that way through the return air. So pretty much I've got extremely good air circulation in the room because I got the air movers pushing that huge volumes on the sides, but not directly on the plants. And then I've got the spiral diffusers coming out the roof. So yeah, standing in the room is absolutely amazing. You feel the air on your ankles, you feel it on your knees, you see slight movement in the sensors, and it's I just can't wait to fill that room up with some cannabis. So
yeah, awesome.
And then
I'll make you see it with some cannabis.
And then another point I just like to bring up is, you're probably noticing all those pink bags on top of my grow beds, and that's just I'm just protecting the soil moisture there. I've filled those beds up with 1,500 liters of living soil, and I don't know if you know about living soil, but it's all about keeping the microbes alive and giving them something to feed on. So that's mostly where my plants feed from the soil, and my fertigation only really happens once a week, taking it back to what we just spoke about in the nutrient store there. So the nutrients really only get applied once a week, small dose, 5 ml per liter, and that system is obviously flushed to clear out any organic matter that may be residual in the pipe. So yeah, that's just a small touch on my cultivation method, which I'm sure we'll discuss in future videos.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to kind of do a follow-up of this in about 3 months, see how everything's gone, maybe even do some yield calculations, see how the yields pulled through. If for anyone who was wondering, IPM is integrated pest management. Bernhard, maybe just quickly, why did you go that strategy? Why avoid pesticides? Maybe just some of the background on that.
Well, pesticides are, I mean, they're harmful to us and to the plants and to the pests that they are killing. So it's not something that we want to see in the medical industry, especially once submitting analytical tests and getting negative results from that. So I like to play the safest route possible, to go organic, beneficial fungicides, and so on, so that it can't leave any residue on the plant. It doesn't get picked up on any tests, and and overall, it's just, for me, prevention is the best cure. Like I've mentioned to you before, I've experienced quite a few issues in growing cannabis, and I believe with the strategy that I have, those issues are something of the past. So yeah, I'll get more into it when we have that discussion. But yeah, that was a basic intro on it.
Okay, awesome. So talk us through the choice. I mean, I know Quest quite well. I've had some dealings with them in the past. It's quite a top class piece of equipment. I know you're still doing some work there on that Quest system. Why did you select that, and talk us through the necessity of dehumidification?
All right, cool. So, I mean, the Quest is industry standard in the States. I mean, you look at those videos of growing exposed videos and canna cribs and so on, and everyone's got a Quest in their facility. So that takes me back to 2 years ago when I started my research. I mean, that's what I was doing. I was constantly researching licensed facilities and what equipment they got, how the layouts look, who's all working there, what their jobs are, XYZ. So the Quest was obviously the most prominent. And then when I met James from Hydropers up in Cape Town about 3-4 years ago, we built that relationship during my hobby stage, and the relationship continued into me building this facility. And he started a relationship with Quest in the States, and he told me that he would be importing them. So it was kind of a no-brainer, as I've already got the Trollmaster and the Quest. They function so well with the Trollmaster, and it's almost, they kind of recommend it to work hand in hand. So yeah, I was very excited when James gave me the heads up that they'll be receiving Quests and Analoxes, and I was like, wow, out of this world. And I knew that I was on the right track, and that he was going to hook me up with the right equipment.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, anyone who's watched Growing Exposed and Canna Cribs, Quest is the staple in that space. So, I mean, it's one where, I usually see it as quite a high-tech piece of equipment and kind of essential in this space. So I'm a big fan of it as well. So good to see it in the facility. Talk us a bit through, I see you've got obviously a clean room there in terms of changeover benches, your drying, your trimming. Talk us through that a bit.
All right, so the PPE room is the room I discussed in the first slide when we entered the interior of the building. That's the room that you have to enter through in order to get into the processing area. So I've got as you enter there, I've got a foot mat, which is got a disinfecting soap and tiny knobbies in there, and also a rim so that the liquid cannot escape. So you step onto that mat, you scrub your feet, your corridor shoes on it, and then you get onto that mat to dry them up. Once you've done that, you can slip on your shoe covers, switch over to the clean side, and put on your coverall. Then apply your gloves and then your mask, and you exit the building. So it's pretty much a bottom to top dress code here. I got that from clean room videos on YouTube, like doing a lot of research on that. And yeah, we've got sanitization in there as well. So it makes it pretty difficult for us to bring bacteria into the processing area. In addition to that, I've got positive pressure, so there's constantly air pushing out the bottom of the doors. So there's no way that anything can enter via that way, being dust or bugs or anything like that. On the right, on the top right, I've got the lobby. So after you've passed through the PPE room, you're faced with the lobby. So this kind of acts like a secondary airlock on top of the PPE room being an airlock room. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the doors are also interlocking. So the one cannot open before the other one is completely locked, just to avoid any cross-contamination. But yeah, like I was saying, the lobby is there. In the lobby, I'm able to weigh my wet material before hanging up to dry. which the dry room is the door on the far right, in the top right-hand image. To the left of that door is the trim room, and to the left of that is the weighing packaging room, which you can see on the signage. So yeah, you can the flow is pretty smooth. Once the employees have come to the PPE room, there's a material airlock room where the harvested product would be stored, and obviously you completely cover all and sanitized, and then only you can receive the product into that area. So yeah, SAPRA was also very impressed with that procedure and how it avoids any contamination to the product. Moving on from weighing and packaging, well, we're not on those images yet, but
sorry, I'm going there now. There we are.
So yeah, so after trimming, we move on to weighing and packaging, and from weighing and packaging, we'll move on to the receiving area. So just go back to the receiving and dispatch area. So I've chosen not to show the doors of the final storage and the receiving quarantine area, just for safety reasons, and but pretty much the product will be weighed and packaged and removed to the second quarantine, and once analytical tests are approved, it will be removed to the final package storage.
Okay.
The bottom image there, we can see my receiving and dispatch area. We've demarcated it on the ground with yellow tape. So the big rectangle would be where the vehicle can reverse into the building, and then the garage door can be closed, and whatever happens is completely concealed from the outside. The first block on the left, the small block, that's the dispatch block. So any product being dispatched gets moved onto that block and can get loaded into the vehicle from there. And the receiving or dispatch clerk will document all of that, being on our software inventory control. The three doors on the right-hand side of that bottom image there, they are return to supplier, rejected goods, and receiving quarantine. Those rooms are used for receiving growing equipment or growing medium, or your seed intake will be received through that door. And rejected goods are obviously for your product that does not pass analytical testing, and return to supplier is for any nutrients or whatever you ordered over excess amount of, that you can return it to them. And all of that information is constantly logged and on the logbooks, and the SOPs are on the doors there to explain that procedure to the relative employee.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to say firstly a big thank you, because I mean not many people will take you through and a walkthrough in a facility, but I think what you're doing here is so important in terms of we've discussed this ahead of time. Thank you, Ross, for the introduction as well from your end. I mean, increasingly, if we're going to formalize the sector, getting the information out there to the industry, going through experiences with SAPRA on the importation and on the export is so vital. I can even see that what's going to come up very shortly for us is I'm looking forward to when the facility is fully bloom, has a lot going, because we're going to do our own kind of growing exposed cannabis episode. And I know when you did your research, as I did my research and Ross did his research, the one I was looking for was a South African version of cannabis or growing exposed. And ultimately I think this is loosely a good discussion on this, because we're going to see more facilities coming online. And I think you've taken an immensely helpful step in terms of opening this up to the public. So I just want to say a big thank you. I know that a lot of individuals are going to watch this and watch this again. And I know that we're going to be back probably live with the camera when we have plants in the facility, and we're gonna have to walk through, see it in person. I think you've done a great job showing it visually from a slide deck. And I'm looking forward to the real live walkthrough that we're probably going to have in about 2 to 3 months' time. Bernhard, I can't say anything but thank you for having us. I know that this is really impressive for me to share with customers and clients as well. And I know there's probably going to be a lot of comments. For anyone who wants to reach out to Bernhard, I've included his email there. I know it might update, but it will probably keep auto forwarding from bfunk@sevenbladecannabis.com. In terms of closing remarks, Ross, what has been your experience in terms of this facility and seeing what Bernhard has done?
Yeah, look, it was a fantastic experience. Bernhard's got a fantastic team behind him, which makes life a lot easier. And I mean, his input, his work ethic, I mean, everything he put into this facility, I mean, you can see it with sweat, tears, blood. He basically lives there, if you want to put it that way. I mean, he works long hours. He's always there, even though he can't grow it. He's making sure that everything is running as smoothly as it possibly can. And I think he's going to do extremely well. I'm actually honored that I've actually got to meet Bernhard and actually been allowed on his facility and helped him with his inspection.
Awesome, perfect. Bernhard, in terms of closing remarks from your side, anything you'd like to say, to the public in general? And the biggest thing is maybe some advice to close out for those that are, firstly, guys in the space. I mean, I've been a big advocate of, let's all try to get associated in the space. Let's push. I know there's a lot of individuals I've spoken to that want the same thing. What do you hope for the industry for the rest of 2021 and going forward in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I'd just like to just say thanks to the CCB. I mean, I don't believe this would have been possible without having someone to consult with that has experience within the industry. So that was a big benefit to the completion of this project. And yeah, I do believe that consulting on something like this would be necessary. I mean, it's a big ballpark to dive into if you're not sure of everything that's required. And I mean, I've just discussed a few small requirements, and we could sit here and chat for hours if I had to tell you everything that was required. But yeah, my advice would be to take it on slowly and steadily, not rush into just purchasing any property. I almost made that mistake, so yeah, that's my advice on that end. And yeah, I'd just like to see more people do it the right way. I constantly getting comments from people hearing that they've seen Sapra's been there like 3 times already and they still don't have any resolution letter, and I'm like, well, what are you guys doing wrong, thinking to myself. And I hope that a video like this will bring some clarity. And I mean, I wouldn't have launched a video like this unless my inspection went as well as it did. And yeah, I'm confident in my design and how the CCB has helped me develop it. And yeah, if I had seen a video like this a year ago, it would have changed my whole perspective on the thing, because a lot of these things or a lot of the challenges I was faced with happened during the build, and sort of had to quickly figure things out on the spot. Even though it was about a year and a half worth of planning and preparation towards this point, things changed almost every day. So yeah, be confident in yourself, consult with those that have experience, and take it step by step. You're not going to build a cannabis farm in 2 months. It's a slow, long process, and by the time that you get done with it, you'll understand exactly what I'm speaking about.
Perfect. Well, I fully agree. The one thing I will say is thank you for breaking the silos, because a lot of guys try to hold on to it. And if we're trying to build an industry, if we're trying to become a global player, we need things like, going through the facilities, talking about the facilities, lessons learned, knowing that, like you said, when you start with it, you iterate quickly, you improve quickly because you're actually doing it. And I just have to say thank you once again, because it takes a special type of individual to open up the industry and to talk about their facility, basically their baby, in terms of how they've invested so much time and effort. And I'm looking so forward to publishing this and sharing this. And Bernhard, thank you once again. I know we're going to be back, and we're probably going to be rolling live and go through the facility with plants in it. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I can only wish you the best of luck going forward. And once again, a big thank you in terms of your willingness to share. So I'm going to log us out here, and basically, guys, thank you once again for making the time. And I'm looking forward to coming back to the facility live. Cheers, everyone.